Hi, and welcome to this episode of Consciousness and Me. My name is Josephine, and today we're going to see through Maya. I'm going to talk about how come it appears that there is a world out there, even though non-duality suggests that everything happens in consciousness. I mean, from the get-go, the way we look at it in our society is basically that I am a body, and I have a mental inner life, and then there's a world out there made of matter that's different from me. That's the way we're kind of used to seeing the world. We don't even know that we have a filter on, and we don't know that it's part of a belief. We don't need to explore, we don't need to explain that anymore. So let's look at the alternative. Let's look at the alternative that there is no matter, that everything arises in consciousness. Everything is made of mental stuff, and that the matter that seems to be on the outside is actually just what consciousness looks like when perceived to our sense perceptions. So one of the common errors is that we start too far. We've already assumed that there's a world out there, and then we make the mistake of already being in a dualistic worldview, of being in materialism. So we have to go back to the very first interaction we have, or the first experience. Let's take touch, for example. The initial thing we say is that my hand is touching the blanket. But already there we're in dualistic terms. Actually what's happening is that when I rub my fingers, touch is happening. So the difference is that I cannot say that my fingers are touching a blanket, because then I've already gone too far. My experience is actually the experience of touch. Bear with me here. If you imagine touching something, the interaction you have is the experience of touch. Let me rephrase that again. You don't have the experience of a finger touching a blanket. You have the experience of touch. And where does this experience of touch arise? It arises inside of your consciousness. Check in with yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't see it as a provocation or anything. Just make sure that you're aware, or that you're on board with the fact that the sensation of touch isn't happening in your finger, isn't happening out there. It's happening within your awareness. You are aware of the sensation. And if you were to go up and almost like explore, what is this sensation made of? What's the sensation of touch made of? It's not made of anything other than your consciousness. Imagine you being a newborn baby before you'd even opened your eyes. And something was touching your body, let's say your finger. You didn't even know you had a finger. But something happened in you. You got a sense perception. You weren't even aware that there was anything that we now call a space, a room. Because all you knew was your internal world. You hadn't opened your eyes. You hadn't constructed the world around you. But you were aware. So the touch that happened on your finger was just a sensation arising inside of your consciousness. It then took you quite a few years to start to map out, how do I make sense of these? How can I find them useful? And remember, it's not to tell you the truth, it's to make them useful. The way we map sensations in our head isn't to tell us the truth about the world, it's to make them useful. So for a baby, everything happens inside of their own consciousness. It's just sensations arising, almost like vibrations going through their consciousness. And then they have to learn, okay, so this usually correlates together. I can feel my mother's touch when I hear her voice. When she touches this hand, it feels in a different way, and when she touches here. So I start to create a room. And over time, we get so good at creating this room. So we think that our actual perception is the room. It is the mental creation that we see in our heads. We think that the world is the map that we've drawn in our heads. And the reason we start calling it a hand is because when we open our eyes and we start to see, we correlate. Okay, so I hear my mother's voice, I feel her touch, and I can see in my hand that she's touching something out here. So I map them together. I map the visual representation and the touch and the sound. And then I construct a worldview in my head. But during no time of this, did anything happen outside of my consciousness? Does this go against how you normally see the world? That's understandable. It's the same for me. I'm also brought up in this world. I guess it's useful here to remember that what we see out there isn't always what we take for granted. Take a mirror, for example. When you look in a mirror, you see another person. All of your sense perception is telling you that there is another person inside of that mirror. But through experience, you've learned that actually there isn't a person there. It's me. It's just a light reflection. So we do learn to override the way our sense perceptions interpret the world. But we still see a person there. It's useful to see ourselves in the mirror. So we don't discard it. We just interpret it in a different filter, so to speak. Okay, so maybe you're with me, maybe you're not. But does this mean that I am suggesting that everything that happens goes on in my mind, in my private mind? And no, I'm not. And that's not what non-dualism normally suggests, even though solipsism is under the umbrella of non-dualism. And solipsism is the belief that everything happens inside of my mind, and all the people in the world, they don't really exist. They have no existence of their own. They're just occurrences within my mind. No, it doesn't have to be this to be mental. What does have to happen is that we have to expand when we think of mental. Normally we think of mental as happening inside my brain and happening inside of your brain. But that's just an assumption. There's a different perspective, and that is if we believe that the whole universe is pervaded with mental or consciousness, or rather it's built up of consciousness. And my mind is just a tiny localization. It's like a little corner of consciousness has gotten on a headset, has been localized. And from that localization, everything that's within, that can arise within as thoughts, memories, sense perceptions, or bodily sensations, happens within. And then I can interact with the surroundings. So there's no denying that there isn't something that's vaster than what goes on in my mind. But the suggestion is that that doesn't have to be material. That can be mental as well. That could be made of consciousness. Does this sound really strange for you? Well, I'd suggest that you've experienced it so many times already. Every time we dream, we become these little dream avatars within our own consciousness, within our own minds. I can dream that I go to the jungle and I walk through these majestic trees, and I can touch the leaves of these trees. I can go up and I can smell them. And my mind is perfused with sense perception. In my dream, I'm absolutely convinced that there's an inside me and there's an outside jungle. But when I wake up, I realize that there was never a jungle out there. Everything happened inside of my mind. Everything was made of mental, of consciousness, of mental things. My dream avatar and the rainforest was all created in my mind, in my dreaming mind. Now let's just back that up one more step. It's like you and I are dream avatars in a universal mind, in a universal consciousness. There never has to be any other material than mental things. My experience on the inside of the universe's dream avatar, and on the outside there's a rainforest, there's the streets of New York, there's endless desert and vast oceans. And they're not happening inside my mind, but they're happening inside the universal mind or universal consciousness. Notice what happens inside of you. Is there any rebellious? There probably is. There is for most of us. There still is for me, even though I'm rationally on board with this. Because we're so conditioned to put on this filter that we picked up as a baby that is very useful, that there is a me and mental is on the inside and material and physical things is on the outside. And they're made of some completely different material. And hypothetically, that could be the case. It could have been that way. But we're not really interested in what could have been. We're interested in what the evidence is pointing towards. And there's also this concept of parsimonious. Like, if you don't need another, if you don't need to make another assumption to explain everything that's going on, then don't add one. I'm taking this example straight from Bernardo Kastrup, but I just think it's so spot on. Like, imagine you woke up one morning and in your backyard there were footsteps in the snow. All the way up to your door. And you try to figure out, think what could have happened. Well, one option is that an alien spaceship landed in your neighbor's backyard, crawled over the fence, flew over and barred your slippers and made footsteps in the snow, then put your slippers back inside your door, flew back to the spaceship and then left Earth. That's completely in line with the evidence. But there's also another explanation, and that could be that your neighbor went to the wrong door. Last night when they came home from work, they just accidentally walked up to your door and then walked back to their own garden again. That's in line with the evidence. So both of the story, the neighbor that took the wrong door or the aliens, they explain the situation, but they're different in terms of parsimonium. They have different variables. With the neighbor story, you don't have to explain anything else. You're not adding anything odd into the mix. But with the aliens, you've created more questions than you answered. You have to explain where aliens come from. You have to explain why they were there. There's so many added questions. And why am I even into this? Well, if we're going to use the matter model, we introduce a new problem. How can two different fundamental substances such as mind and matter interact? Well, we can't really. That's why we create the hard problem of consciousness and we pretend it's not really a problem, even though it's so obviously staring us in the face. The only interaction, and the hard problem of consciousness is the question of how does qualitative experiences arise from quantities, matter? And we haven't solved that. Some people, me included, suggest it will never be solved because it's the wrong riddle. Because why we created matter was only to explain when I touched the blanket, you could say that there's matter in my finger and matter in the blanket and they rub together. But that's just an explanation model. That's just so that it's easier for us to communicate. The only primary relationship I have both with my hand and with the touch is happening inside of my consciousness. And for me, this took a while to understand. I tried to back up as much as possible, and then I started with matter. But there's another step. The matter isn't the most fundamental experience I have. My consciousness, everything that touch that happens in my consciousness, vision happens in my consciousness, and that is the first step. So basically, it's okay if your mind is protesting, if your mind's saying that seems to go against everything I've built up, because it's true, it does go against everything you built up. But that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at what's true. Which model is more in line with what our evidence is telling us and adds the fewest new questions. And that's what keeps telling us to be the most likely explanation. Am I suggesting that analytical idealism or non-dualism is the absolute fundamental truth of the universe. Well, in a way I am, but I am saying that I believe so. And I'm doing that from the perspective of a human mind, just so minor in this whole universe. So based on what we know right now, it covers the whole spectrum. Will it change over time? Probably. Is it the ultimate truth of reality? Most likely not. That's going to be a much more advanced theory, but it's the best we've got right now. And that's how we work our way forward. We come closer to the truth, one step at a time. And that's not going to be comfortable for the mind. It's going to feel wrong. But don't let that hinder you. Stick with the evidence. Keep questioning. Yes, it feels wrong to discard matter as another substance because you've been conditioned in something else for decades. And that's okay. And also don't take something on board that isn't fully following your rationale. But if you want to question the consciousness-only model, make sure you question the matter model as well. Ask the same questions to our current worldview or the narrative of our society. Ask that to defend itself. How come you cannot explain how consciousness arises from matter? How does that exist? How does that add up? It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's all of us on a quest to find truth. And we've all got it wrong to some extent. It's just collectively we can combine our efforts, and the thing we have to do is to be honest with ourselves, to be able to let go of our perceived ideas. To be curious, to invite this childlike essence of, what if I'm wrong? What if this isn't true? What would it look like if I actually let go of this preconceived idea? Then it becomes fun. Then it doesn't become this conflict. It doesn't become a gamble of the egos of who's right and who's wrong. No, it's about finding out truth. We live in this vast universe. We don't know why we're here. We don't know why the universe exists. There's nothing to defend against each other. So we're all clueless to some extent. And that's where the fun starts. That's when we can explore together. That's when we can collectively combine all of our understandings, all of our experiences. But to do that, we have to let go of narratives that's, well, quite frankly, not holding up to the evidence anymore. And one way is to start talking about it. Start exploring it. Finding truth, I guess. So maybe you're already used to this idea that consciousness is all there is, that the appearance of the world is an illusion. Maya is an illusion, if you want to speak in more spiritual terms. Or maybe you're completely new to it. It doesn't really matter, actually. We're all on this journey together. I probably left some thread unanswered. Please remind me in the comments if I did, or if you have any other questions. Any thoughts? You're listening to Consciousness and Me, and my name is Josephine. Thank you.